We got 8 M6 8/8s with the RGB light. We got 2 800 by 8 JL amps, 2 of the MLC RW Marine lighting controllers, and we're going to be putting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 speakers into this boat. These amps are going to be kind of a pickle to mount. I think what we're gonna have to do, because it's so thin on this wall, we're gonna go ahead and put a piece of starboard against that wall so we can mount them like this with the wires coming out in between the 2 amps. Up here we've got the radio up there. I think what we're gonna end up doing is putting one of these in. So this controller is just a little puck. You hook it up by Bluetooth. That'll probably end up going there. I think we're gonna start by, we'll at least get the holes drilled and then probably work on mounting that amp. So got a hole saw for the speakers. This is a 7.5 inch hole saw. It'll fit the 8/8s. We've actually measured right here. So from the middle of that speaker to the middle of this speaker is 108 inches. So what we're gonna do is measure over to 54 inches, and we're gonna make our middle line 54. So that way it'll be in between these two, same as over there. And then we're gonna add 54 and go from here 54 inches to there. So that way, boom, they're all spaced evenly out from each other. Because if we pulled that speaker out just to make sure that the hole's gonna fit with our 8/8s, that will need to be trimmed out and enlarged just a little bit. Won't use the hole saw, use the Sawzall for that. But the rest of them we got all marked 54 from the center of this speaker. They're 6 3/4 down. All those are marked, so now we can just drill them out. Got all the old speakers out and all the new holes are drilled on both sides of the boat. So now what I need to do is go ahead and take the stencil and put it on there, mark a trace, and then use the Sawzall to cut out and enlarge that hole for the new speakers. Actually, they already fit, so that is wonderful. One problem that I do see that I am going to run into though is that the holes are pretty jacked up on a lot of these, so might have to tilt the speakers a little bit on certain ones or fill those holes to be able to get these to sit properly. But I'm gonna go around and double check every one of them, make sure that they all fit like that, and then as long as they do, then I'll put some strings in there so that way we can be ready to run our wires. They have to be specific wires that we need to run because we got to run wires with the RGBs. So it's going to get the 2 wires for the speaker, and then it's also going to get a 4 wire to power the lights and the RGB side of the speaker. I kind of got an idea of how I want to do these amps here. I'm going to make a piece of starboard to fit here. It's going to be about 1.5 inches off of here, so that way you can still get these screws out in order to put that on there. But then also they're going to be like this on that board, and I'll have the wires come up through the middle, over the top, and down into there. Also have the 2 breakers right here, so that way there's a breaker for each amp, and then it'll all be mounted there. Wires come up the top, over down into here, and I can stick them all down into there, into the rat's nest of the rest of the wires, which I'm going to clean up a little bit. Just, I need to clean the battery connections and do a couple things in there, but I won't do a whole lot because this is just what it is. Got our amps on here and they're looking pretty good. We're going to be doing a couple things on here. One, obviously input filter is going to be boat, not car, and input mode is going to be 8 channel because we're only going to use 1 input to do all 8 channels and just have 2 zones. This one's probably going to be port side, starboard side, something like that. Got these mounted. Now I'm going to go ahead and get into our breakers. Alright, something that I've got to figure out now is I do need to make some sort of a service loop here, because the power cables are going to be going to this battery switch, and this whole panel needs to be removable. So can't have these cables be too tight. I'm going to have to run them in and down, so that way when you pull this panel off and set it down on the ground, it will, you know, have the length of cables to do that. I'll pull this off. Also, I'm going to pull the amp off for the old one. I'm going to get that amp out of there and start working on this wiring situation. There are RCAs here, but we're going to go ahead and replace these RCAs because they are pretty nasty. So we're going to actually go ahead and pull new RCAs just to pull them. And I'll start with the remote wire and the RCAs going to the amps. I'm going to start with those two wires first. Alright, we got our RCAs in, got our power cables up over into our breakers, negatives, ground cables all done, remote for the amp turn on, those are done as well. I think what next I'm going to do is start taking apart this amp and all these speaker wires, so that way I can pull the new wires with the controller wires for the lights for the speakers. So those control modules and all that stuff, that's what we need to run next. So I think I'm going to go ahead and take apart the amp, get those wires, get these ready to run, so we can pull the wires for the power and the speakers to each one of our holes. It is time to go ahead and take this amp out of here. One thing I am noticing is if you look at the power wire supplying the amp, I mean, these are like 12 gauge, which is tiny for an amp. So, I mean, it doesn't really matter. I ran new wires anyway to the new amps, but nonetheless, I'm going to take these out, get the speakers done, get all these wires pulled out, so that way we can get ready to pull all of our new speaker wires and power wires for the RGBs and everything to the new speakers from the amps. Unfortunately, these wires here for our speakers are going down here in this bundle, and that whole bundle is taped and zip tied together, so there's literally no way of being able to pull new wires using the old wires. So now we got to find a new way to get our wires for the RGBs lights on the speakers from in here to our speakers. I believe I got this figured out. I took this battery out here so I can get access to in there, and then I've traced these wires here that I've got. These were added later. They look like they were power wires for some lights to speakers previously or something like that, and I'm going to use these as pull strings to go down in there and then also to go in there, and then that will let me come up through here because I have those wires coming out of that hole there, and then also that hole over there. And then I'll just attach my wire to here with string, pull one through one at a time, because I'm going to need 4 for the speakers and then 1 for the lights, and the lights are just going to daisy chain off each other. That's where we're at right now. Let's tie it up and try it. Up through the other way. So okay, we've got our RGB wire up here. It's going to go to the speaker, and we're just going to daisy chain from each speaker all the way down. Now we've also got the 14 pins all the way over for this side. Got them all hanging out here, so I'm gonna pull these other sides over here, and that way. This town ain't big enough for the 2 of us. That was impressive. So pull those, and then I'll be in here, and we'll get the rest of these pulled in, and we'll be ready to roll. Alright, so we got the daisy chains ready for our LEDs. We got the 14 pin, or not 14 pin, but the 14 pins. I keep saying 14 pins. But we got our daisy chain of our 5 wire for the lights, just because they didn't have the 4s, and 14 2s for our speakers. Those are all ran to each one of the spots, ready to go. In here, we've got them all ran as well. That's that side. Here is the other side. I just got to spool it all back there the way it's supposed to be, and then I'll start hooking up the amp, getting those all in line. And then the last thing that we'll do is go ahead and put the actual light modules in, and these are pretty much power to these. There's the controller, and then hook them up to the RGB wires going out to all of our speakers.
Huh? One redeeming video is him.
So this right here is just a sticker, and you pretty much just pull the back off of it like this, pick where you want to put it. Alright, we got the speakers all lit up, looking good. In here we got our controllers put up there, wires ran back there, both of our modules mounted. They come up here, they're on switched power. Push buttons, they light up, or download the app. Amps are all done, looking right. They need the covers, but they do need to be tuned. But other than that, we're all pretty much looking good.